Yes. All right, we'll do that. There is a chat if you guys want to ask questions in the chat, or you could just interrupt and just ask me a question or anything. We're gonna just keep letting everybody into the waiting room, from the waiting room, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna get started and you know what, people will join us. So, okay, I'm off of mute, right? Yes, I am. Okay. All right. Good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome to everyone. Welcome to my New Jersey Animal Response family. Thank you so much for coming. I say family for two reasons. One is that we are all here tonight for the same great purpose, for the greater good, for when a disaster happens and we're going to shelter because we love what we do and we're passionate about it. And in a time of an emergency like that, we need to be a family and we need to help each other. So, someone who's in another county or another cart, we all need to just help each other in those times. And that's why I say family. And the second reason is because GSART is very proud to do some training again for the symposium. We've trained at the symposium annually every year for many years. So we're happy to return. Some of you will be familiar with myself. Those of you who are new this year, so you're not familiar with me, my name's Christine. I am the executive director of the Garden State Animal Resource Team. We've been a member of the Animal Emergency Working Group for many years, and we were established years ago after Hurricane Sandy with the state veterinarian, Dr. Silverman. And we were created for two main purposes. The first and primary one is to help all carts in the entire state, all 21, and to support carts, to help them. Resources, we train carts. We can go to any county and provide training. And our second purpose is to directly help and assist the NJDA. So anything that Dr. Strylick would ask for help with, we would happily do because we support the Department of Ag. Um, if anybody is interested in training, just you can talk to me after the webinar tonight. We also train MRC, we train OEMs, we train any kind of animal response, anything. So, all right. Let's see. So for this year's 2026 AWAG Symposium, we're going to do training just a touch bit different this year. For those of you who have been to it before, we tend to do traditional training, which is a lot of material, PowerPoint. Sometimes we do hands-on exercises. This year, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do tabletop exercises. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with tabletop exercises, that is a discussion-based exercise. You will be at tables in groups of 8 and working with a team. And your task will be a sit-down discussion exercise. Now, the key thing about a tabletop is that the participants already know the material. So they already know the standard operating procedures, the protocols, how it works, what to do, the forms, everything. The tabletop exercise is a fake scenario, like there's a hurricane coming and you have to set up a shelter. And so we're going to ask you things like, do this, do that. We're going to give you tasks. We're giving you injects. Hey, 50 dogs just show up. Now you have to admit those into the shelter. So it's kind of a scenario exercise where you'll have to, say what you would do. But that is based on already knowing the material, which is why we have done these two webinars, because we understand that there's a lot of people who are not familiar with the topic, especially cart sheltering or anything about it. So the webinars are basically to teach you the SOPs and protocols prior to the symposium so that when you go there, you can just function in the tabletop without trying to learn what to do for the SOPs at that time. So I hope that makes sense for everybody. So, and we'll give you a lot of examples tonight so that it helps kind of drill everything in. While I'm talking, please feel free to ask any questions. I'm going to talk pretty quickly. My goal is to stick to an hour. I know it's, we listed it as 1 hour, 7 to 8, but to be very fair and honest, depending on how many questions we get or what we do, it might go over like 10, 15 minutes. There's a lot to cover. Doing two SOPs plus their forms is a lot to get through in an hour. So just bear with me. And if I talk too fast, just slow me down. And feel free to ask questions at all. Anna's going to help watch the chat room and let everybody in from the waiting room. So, okay, we're going to get started. So tonight, there's not going to be any boring PowerPoint or anything like that. I'm going to put the SOPs and the forms right up on the screen to share, and we're just going to go through them. And we're going to zip through the SOP real quick and the form and just make sure that everyone understands what they read. I know that these were emailed to you and you probably reviewed them already, but we just want to make sure, just to check to see if anybody had any questions. So let me share my screen. Okay. I'm going to share. Here we go. Share. Okay. So I just have to choose the right one. Okay. So of the two SOPs we're going to do tonight, we have the resource request. So we're going to review the SOP and the form for the resource request because one of the tabletops is requesting resources while the cart is operating. The second tabletop that we're doing is going to be the facility inspection. So we'll get to that in just a little bit. So we'll just do the resource one for now. So this is the SOP, which I'm assuming everybody read already. So this just tells you the process that happens when we are operating a cart shelter live wherever we are in the disaster, and we need to request resources. And the way we do these SOPs is we try to spell everything out in detail so nothing is vague, and it helps people out as much as possible. And we do break it down into sections. The overall arching section that you read first is just basically how resource requests work. So the key things to know is that during times of operation, only the cart shelter manager is the one who actually submits requests for resources, and it goes right to their county EOC, the Emergency Operating Center. So that's where all your OEM guys are when we're deployed and activated in a disaster. So your county EOC is where you're going to deliver your resource request, and that is only by the cart shelter manager. They have to approve of everything. Now, when you are operating, the staff is probably going to notice that things need to be ordered first, your regular staff. The staff tells the area lead, so the supervisor of, say, the pet area. The staff will say, hey, we're out of this. We need to order more. And that supervisor says, okay, we need to fill out a resource request. And then that goes up to the cart shelter manager so that the cart shelter manager reviews everything, can approve it, can sign for it to get it sent over to the EOC. Now, in some cases, there are carts that may have a EOC liaison. So that's basically a cart member of their cart team whose job is not to be in the cart shelter. That person is actually sitting in the county EOC with the rest of the county OEM staff and as the EOC is operating. So that would be called a cart EOC liaison. Not every cart has that. So if they don't, then just the cart shelter manager directly submits it to the EOC. So that's just a little thing that you'll notice in the SOP. When the resource request is given to the EOC will fulfill the request of whatever is needed. Now, there is even kind of a hierarchy when that happens. So your county OEM will try and fill that request first with whatever they have, whatever inventory they have, or if they have MOUs with something. So basically, when you send it to your OEM, like they try to fulfill it first. Now, if they can't, the next step they do is just to ask their neighbor, their fellow county whoever is next to them. And, that gets them resources quicker. That can, you might even have MOUs. It depends on what it is that you're requesting. Now, if that doesn't work, then of course your EOC can actually kick it up to the state level. So they would submit the request for a resource to the state itself. And the system that you saw in the SOP is called EMIT. So pretty much most counties use the EMIT system. They will submit the request for the resource in the EMIT system, and it goes to the state, and then that'll be fulfilled by the state. Now, the key thing to know about the EMIT system is that it gives a tracking number to every item that the EOC requests. So you can request 10 leashes, 5 cages, 3 water bottles. The tracking number is per item. So you're going to get a tracking number for the water bottles, a tracking number for the crates, and you'll get a tracking number for the leashes. So that's how it works. There is not one tracking number for like the whole order, like, you're ordering from Amazon. It doesn't work that way. So this is why you'll notice that for the resource request form, you have to fill out a form per item, because that's how it's tracked anyway in the system. And when we created this SOP in the form, we spoke to the state OEM and state operations and county OEM to verify this process. So it has been vetted in such a way that that's how it was written. So when you are looking through the SOP, you'll notice that it explains these things that I just kind of quickly verbally went over for you. On the second page of the SOP, I want to point out that there's a whole section that has to do with staffing. So there's a staffing section, and then there's the stuff, the supplies, which is like the leashes, the crates, the water bottles that I just mentioned. For the staffing section, it's a little bit different and more complicated than just stuff. For when you want just supplies like gloves and crates and everything, it's very easy and straightforward. You're going to fill out the form, be very specific when you're filling out the form what you want, and it'll get put into the system, get a number, tracking number, and, straightforward. What's not so straightforward is the requesting of staff. So if that's the resource you need. And when you read this SOP, it kind of explains that. Staffing is a little bit more complicated because it depends on what kind of staffing you need. It's not all the same. You may need different positions. You may need registration people, or you need the pet area people, or you need a supervisor, like a logistics supervisor or a pet area supervisor. You may need a cart shelter manager. It just depends on what you need and how many you need. Now, when it comes to staffing, I want to be very clear and make sure everybody knows this. That has a hierarchy of how to ask for it. When you tell your EOC that you need staff, their job is to try and fulfill it in-house first. If they can't, they go to the next county. So you are not going directly to the state. The first ask is your neighboring county. So you're going to call your neighboring cart and say, hey, I really need people. Are you activated? If not, can you send people over? So you're going to try and fulfill it with neighboring carts around you. If there is none, that's when you kick it up to the state. And then, of course, the state will try and help you get staffing for your cart operations. I want to note that for the AEWG Symposium, we are doing this tabletop, and we are going to concentrate on the actual supplies and the stuff, the items. We will not be working with the staffing resource request during the symposium. We don't have enough time because this tabletop will only be an hour at the symposium. But since you're all on here, I wanted to show you the form anyway. So as you can see, this I'm sharing, it's the staffing assessment for the state requests. So this is when you're going to kick it up into the system to the state. This is going to help Sandy, Dr. Strylick, help you acquire staff if you really need it. The cart shelter manager is going to fill this out and be very detailed. How many do you have? How many do you need? What position do you need? What shift do you need? That's how to ask for something. The more detailed is the more that you're going to get your request. So this whole entire form has to do with requesting staff, which is separate from stuff. Now let's go to the stuff. So this is the cart shelter resource request form. The cart shelter manager will have to fill this out and sign it before it goes to the EOC. Now, it's very possible that in any given cart that they have the area leads fill this out, maybe even a staffer. It just depends on how you want to delegate it. But the ultimate decision and approval is the cart shelter manager. They have to make sure that the request is actually real. They will make sure that there's no hidden supply somewhere. They will make sure that the request is absolutely necessary before they sign and get it over to the EOC. Okay, now the most important thing, this form, filling out some of these things like the name of where you are, the address of where you are, that's pretty easy. The requester's name is always going to be the cart shelter manager. That is who is requesting. So for the requester's email, it's going to be the cart shelter manager's email. Position will always be cart shelter manager. The phone number, cart shelter manager. This is in the middle here is the actual item that you're going to be requesting. That's the resource. Down below is also pretty easy. The name of your building, the address of where you're located, where you need delivery. Like there's a little line for making notes, go around the side, the back. The cart shelter manager has to sign. You're going to log like which person in EOC this was given to, the date and time, etc., etc. At the bottom, you will also be tracking the request. Okay, now let me come up here. Up here at the top, it says tracking number. When the EOC submits the request to the state, the Emmett system will give them a tracking number. It is up to the cart shelter manager to get that tracking number from their EOC. Now, honestly, usually the EOC just communicates and calls the cart shelter manager and tells them what it is. And then you're going to fill it in on the form here. It's important that you know what your tracking number is for that item, okay? At the bottom, once you get your resource, once it's fulfilled, you'll date and time down here, and then you can file this form away. There is no official way for the cart shelter manager to know where the item is in delivery. Because the cart shelter manager does not have access to the Emmett system themselves, it's literally upon the cart to call and contact their EOC daily to be like, hey, where's my delivery? When is it coming? Is it coming today, later today? What time today? So it's upon the cart shelter manager to contact and with the EOC to find when that is. I strongly suggest every time you contact your EOC to ask where your delivery is, you log it. You want to keep a log of every time you've tried to inquire where your delivery is. Okay. Now let's get to the important part. So in the middle here is where you are going to write what it is you're requesting. Now, I cannot stress enough to everyone that this is the most important part. If you do not accurately, with detail, write down what you need, you will not get what you need, okay? And I'm going to give you some examples tonight, all right? I actually have a form filled out. Okay, so this is a form that's filled out, okay? And we need a box of large exam gloves. So obviously that's the name of it. The quantity being ordered is 1 box. Already fulfilled is 0, of course, amount we need is 1. And this is a box, that's why the box is checked. And then in this box here, you write as much detail as possible. 1 case of exam gloves, size large, okay? Here's the example. You should not write box of gloves, right? That's not going to work because that's not what you need. You need large gloves. So that's why the word large is typed. If you need it small, you type small. If you need medium, you type medium. And I know that sounds pretty obvious, like, duh, Christine, but over the years, we've seen people not explain what they need and then they don't get what they need. Okay. Here's another example. Here's a one for water bottles. So you have a hamster in your cart shelter, right? And you have to set up a cage for them. So the owner brought their hamster, it's just in a shoebox. Okay, so you got to get your cage, you need your bedding, you need a bowl of food, but you need water, right? So you don't have any water bottles. So you are going to write in here, water bottle to attach to the side of the hamster cage, approximately 8 ounces. If you just say water bottle, that's it, 2 words, you're not going to get what you need. The person in the EOC has no idea what you want, why you're asking for it. If you write it in this way, they will understand and you will get what you need. So that's very important. Okay. I'm going to give you some more examples. Okay. I have some written down here for you. Here's another one. Zip ties. Now, for those of you who are familiar with sheltering, when you do have to shelter a lot of animals, it is possible to stack crates of cats, right? It is something that does happen where there's 2 cats on top of each other. When we do that, we zip tie all 4 corners together for safety purposes so the top crate cannot fall off. Now, let's say you need zip ties for that. When you order that supply, you are not going to write zip ties, and that's it. You're not going to do that. You need heavy duty zip ties, not the little light, tiny, thin ones that are going to break in a second. So you would write heavy duty zip ties, 10-inch. If you don't do that, you're going to get these little minuscule 5-inch weak little light duty zip ties. So that's just another example. Another example I have for you is garbage disposal. If you have to order that, you don't just write garbage disposal. You would write a whole detail. How often do you want it picked up during the week? Twice a week. Where do they have to go? Back of the building, side of the building? What size dumpster do you need? There's a whole caveat of things that you would need to put on your form for something like that. But I'm hoping that I'm giving you examples enough to understand how important it is that you write the details of what you need on this form. Okay. Does anybody have any questions so far? No questions so far. Okay, that's wonderful. All right. If you do, you can either type them into the chat or just interrupt and ask. Okay, so we zip through this real quick. Hopefully you guys are okay with how it works. Cart shelter manager only to the EOC. The EOC tries to fill it. If not, they go to their county next to them. If not, then it goes to the state. They put it through the Emmett system. The Emmett system gives a tracking number per item, which is why the forms are per item. And then, of course, the cart shelter manager has to contact the EOC every day to find out where their delivery is to track how fast you're going to get it and make sure you just write that down for your own purposes. Okay. And we also reviewed the form. Hopefully I gave you enough examples to understand how important detail matters when you're writing into this form. Okay. Any questions before I move on? Awesome. Okay. Let's go to the next one. I'm sorry I'm talking really fast, but I'm just trying to get everything done in an hour. Okay. Oops. Sorry. Oh, every time my cursor goes to the top, this black bar comes down. Okay. Okay, so we're moving on to the second one. So the other tabletop we're doing, aside from the resource request, is going to be on your facility inspection. So this is whatever the designated building is for you to use as a cart shelter for when you're activated. Okay, that's the whole purpose of the tabletop when we do it. Now, the associated SOP is what you were given in an email. Okay. And this is called the Cart Shelter Areas Overview. And this overview went over many different things: size, spacing, environmental all kinds of stuff that are minimal requirements for your cart shelter. Okay, we will go through this. And then, of course, this is the form. This is the pre-disaster facility survey. So basically, this is your facility inspection form that you are going to fill out. So you're going to go to wherever it is that's being told that you're going to use as a cart shelter. You're going to fill out this inspection form completely and answer all the questions. You're going to take measurements, photos. You're going to make a diagram. You're going to really learn what your building has and doesn't has and how it works. Okay. There's one other form I want to show you. Sorry, this bar at the top is driving me nuts. There you go. So this form is your pre-setup, post-setup. We are not covering this in the tabletop this year, but since you're on the webinar right now, I'm just going to show it to you real quick. In real life, when we are going to open up a cart shelter, the cart shelter manager is going to use this form. So you are going to go into the building, into the space of where you're going to run your cart shelter, and you're going to fill out the first side, the pre-setup inspection. Basically, this is like when you rent a car. You walk around, you check it out. Are there scratches, dents, holes, whatever? And you're going to make note of that on here. This way, when you're done and you're going to leave the building, you do the post. And then, of course, this way, whoever owns the building doesn't say, hey, your cart did this damage while you were here, but you're going to basically log that you didn't. So that's what this form is for. We're not covering at the tabletop, but I just thought I'd show you. Okay. And then that's the facility one, which we will be doing at the tabletop. Okay. So hopefully you guys read the SOP. There is one other SOP that I want to note that you did not receive in your email, which is very helpful for this topic. We have an SOP that is called the cart shelter pet living area setup. So we actually have SOPs on individual areas. So the registration area, the pet living area, the isolation room, all the different areas. There is an SOP dedicated on how to set that up, how you space the crates, how far apart are the rows, how do you set up the room? You have to have a table and chairs for the food prep. You have to have all these things that are in each kind of room, depending on what the topic that you're talking about. We have an SOP for all of that. And I know that you did not get that in your email, but that does exist. This one that you did get in your email, which is just called an overview, literally is an overview. This does not go into detail how to set up your cart shelter like the other SOPs do. So, but I just want to say that just to be transparent and let you guys know that. Anyway, so this basically goes through, a lot of overview broad things, what kind of shelters there are, what kind of animals you're going to have allowing them in, or not going to be in. Planning for the cart shelter starts on page 3. This has to do with your facility. And this has very basic but important information. So like heat, electricity, air conditioning, ventilation, all that kinds of stuff. I mean, we all know we need that as a minimum, but it's all written down for you just in case. And there are new carts that develop every time. We actually have 3 counties at the same time right now that are starting a cart for the first time or beginning. And, it's helpful for them when things are detailed. So this goes over what the minimum requirements of your facilities need to be, why they need to be, like, for example, random example, exotics, right? If you guys are familiar at all, you know that reptiles, amphibians, birds, they have to be kept at a certain temperature for their safety. So it talks about things like that. Excuse me. This talks about inspecting your building as well, what to accommodate, what not, security, bath. It even has the garbage pickup. Let's see, the areas. It does get into the areas. So, when you are going to think about inspecting your building, remember that there's a minimal amount that you need. Okay. So, for the areas that are minimal, that are must-haves, are registration, which is obvious, and then you have your pet living areas, right? So that's the dog room, the cat room. Then you have your relief areas, and obviously dogs have to go, so that's a required area, which is outside. And of course, food prep, which are usually right in the animal rooms themselves, and of course, an isolation room, because you have to have some kind of emergency backup when an animal's sick or you need to take an animal and isolate it away from the general population. So that's the minimum that you need, okay? And then, of course, you can see there's the should haves, which are really a should. And then, of course, the optional other stuff. But when you guys are doing your annual check, and when I say annual check, I'm saying that because every single cart in our state should inspect their designated cart shelter once a year, minimally. You should go in and inspect it, see if there's any hazards or anything that needs to be fixed, any dangers, outlets not working or whatever. You should be doing this once a year. And also, that's the time to make sure that you're planning for the right amount. Um, as you can see for the minimum amount of required areas over here, the registration, living area, extra, all these things, you'll notice that it's not just 2 rooms. So if, you're in a county and, you were told, hey, you're going to do a cart shelter in X high school or elementary school, and oh yeah, you have these 2 rooms to use. That's not going to work. That is not enough to be sufficient to do anything. You're going to need other things. You need a room for dogs. You need a room for cats. You need a room for exotics. You need an isolation room for backup. So you need quite a bit of space other than just 2 rooms. And so this is something that you can discuss with your OEM to set yourself up for success. During blue sky days is the time to order supplies, make sure your cache is full, make sure your building is ready to go. Train your cart team to know what to do if something happens. Walk them through the space, make sure they know where everything's going to be set up. And also have a backup too. Know where your backup cart shelter is. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, another Hurricane Sandy comes along and you get overwhelmed and you run out of space. What are you doing next? Where's your backup? Are you going to another building? Are you just going to take more rooms in that building? What are you doing? So make sure you talk about that as well. Okay, so we are at planning for emergencies. It goes over this as well. It's helpful information. It doesn't necessarily have to do with the facility inspection itself, but this does have helpful information, and you can see where you'll need supplies as well to do your run your operations. Okay. Sorry. All right. So let me go to the form now. Here we go. So here's the form. You will see this at the tabletop at the AEWG Symposium. Obviously, the top's pretty self-explanatory to fill out. But when you're filling this out, I know it's very detailed. It does ask a lot of questions, and you do have to take measurements. But everything on here is very important, and you need to know this information, okay? And I want to give you an example. Obviously, the most common question is, okay, does this building have a generator, right? That's one of the most things we need to make sure that it has is a generator. Okay, great, it has a generator. But you don't want to stop there. The next question is, okay, if the generator is on, which outlets does it power? Because the generator can be on, but what if it doesn't power the outlets that are your cart rooms? Okay, that's very, very important. As a sake of argument, let's say you have an exotics room. Not everybody does, but let's just say you do. And you have reptiles and their heat lamps are plugged in. Well, what if the generator has to kick in, but those outlets that for that room don't work? If the heat lamps shut off and they don't come back on, those animals will die. And I'm sure you guys don't want that. So it's really important to know which outlets in your cart shelter space will be powered by the generator. So that's just an example of why you want to know details of what you have. Um, you also want to make sure air conditioning, heating, stuff like that. If the generator has to kick in, do those also function? You want to make sure of that, or lighting, stuff like that. Um, sorry about that. Also, you want to know if you can control your own environment, control your heat, control your air conditioning. Obviously, we want dogs to overheat. We don't want exotics to get too cold. So there's always reasons for everything. Hoses, you want to know where hoses are. You want to know where your running water is. Um, Exits are kind of obvious. You need to know where those are, especially for emergencies or in case there's a fire. But you want to make sure you set yourself up for success for even your animal rooms. So obviously the biggest room is going to be for the dogs. So whichever biggest room you have, that's going to be used first for your canines because they take up so much space. And you really, really hope and pray that that room has a door to the outside. So it's much easier to just get them all walked. If not, you're going to have to finagle walking them through the hallway or something to get to the outside. Excuse me. Okay. Also, you want to make sure that you have separation between the human sheltering areas. So for co-located shelters, the humans will be over in the section they are, and the cart will set up the registration table right in front of your area of the building so that no one can get past. So you don't want people from the public just walking into the cart shelter area. Your registration area will be set up to basically block that from happening. So that's a key factor for your setup of your registration. You want to make sure there's enough room for that. When you're doing your inspection, aside from the rooms that were told to you, hey, you're going to be using this room and this room, right, for yours, you want to look at all the rooms. Well, what other rooms can I use? What is in the other rooms? What if I'm operating and I all of a sudden get overloaded and I don't have enough room to house animals? Now you're going to go start hunting, looking up, opening doors and looking to see what other rooms are there, and you're going to have to start taking them. So, but do that ahead of time now when you're doing your inspection. Remember, two rooms is not enough for cart. You need multiple rooms to run a proper shelter and to house everybody. Now, I will be transparent and say that not every cart is the same. We do have some counties where in weather and hurricanes, like in the summer, they don't really have much. Like up at north, there's plenty of counties where if they open up the county sheltering, they're lucky if they get 25 people, 50 people. But you have large counties, say down south by the ocean, where it is normal for us to have large amounts of people. Whenever we have hurricanes coming and the county opens up a shelter, it's not 25 to 50, it's 150 animals, sometimes 200. It's a lot. So obviously each county cart should know what their normal numbers are. This is what you do in blue sky days. You plan and you know what your demographics are in your own county and you account for that. So up north, if you're a tiny little operation and you know that typically anytime you open you only get 25 people, fine, you can probably function with two rooms or so. But if you're bigger and you have a lot, you're going to get a lot, two rooms is not going to cut it. So just throwing that out there. Okay, this form also has very specific areas on here: dog, cat, all that kind of stuff. Remember, like say for cats can never be housed in open areas like a gym or something that doesn't have four walls. Cats can only be housed in an actual room where you can shut the door. That's how you prevent escape and losing animals, okay? You never know when they're going to jump out of their cage when people are working with them. Obviously, exotics need a lot of temperature control, environmental control, isolation. If you have to do it, it needs to be away from general population. There's a whole set of rules that go with that. There's an SOP. Last year's AEWG, we did a whole biosecurity infection control module. So those of you who were there last year, you'll remember that. This form even gives you those other areas, the staff room, the medical room, all supply room, all the things, even though it might be optional and you might not have it. Okay. It's also there. At the bottom, of course, you have to do your diagram, your numbers, take photos, all that kind of stuff. You're going to do your inspection thoroughly, put it all together, knowing what your numbers are, then you can figure out if it's an appropriate place for you to use. If it's not, then you're going to have a discussion with your OEM to be like, listen, this we know for a fact this won't work, so let's set up ourselves now to make it work. We need these rooms, more rooms, this. So let's do this ahead of time so there's no chaos when something happens. I hope that makes sense to everybody. And as a tip for any county that does not have a specific designated building now and you're looking for one, do not use schools. Stay away from schools, because when they close down, they're the first ones who want to open back up. If you have a shelter going on and people can't leave because there was destruction, but the schools want to open back up, now you have a mess on your hands. Okay. Now you're going to have to transfer. You're going to have to go somewhere else. It's a whole mess. So if you can, don't use schools. And also, if you can use a building that's already owned by your county, a county-owned building, then of course your OEM has a lot more power to keep that building for as long as they need, instead of using somebody else's building and getting kicked out, which can cause a big mess. So, all right. Now I know I spoke really, really fast to try to get all of this in. Does anybody have any questions at the moment about anything? About rooms, cart sheltering, what's your minimum? Any questions about the tabletop? That could be a good thing. There's no question. We did have some questions last webinar, so I'll just share them with you. One of them was someone threw out there about tents. Never, ever, ever, ever do carts shelter in a tent. Don't even consider a tent. That's not safe. You can't control the environment. You're going to overheat the animals. So a tent's not really an option. So that's a no. We do have some carts that have a trailer, like an AKC trailer, if they've got the grant. We don't necessarily house in the trailer, especially if the generator of the trailer is not working and you can't control the temperature. But it's always good for an emergency. So, let's see, what were the other questions that were asked in the last one? Bringing oh yes, so the cart leader is obviously going to be the main person doing this inspection and recording everything. Your OEM will be with you as well, but we also suggest that obviously that you bring your cart shelter manager with you. If your cart shelter manager, whoever that is not the same person as the cart leader, then yes, bring them along with you, obviously, because they're going to be running the operation. So that was another question. We gave examples. Okay, I think I covered all of them. Does anybody have any questions about anything? Does anybody have any questions about Emmett? How we submit things? Inventory, supplies? Is there any county on the webinar tonight that does not use Emmett? I thought everybody does, but is there a county that also uses another system? Okay, so either people are on mute or no one has a thing. So Anna, is there anything in the chat? I can't even see the chat room.
No, there's nothing in the chat,
Okay.
but I am monitoring if somebody wants to write a question there.
Okay. And I'm sorry I talked so fast, guys. Sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure I got everything in really quickly and only took an hour of your time tonight. Okay. All right. I could do one more thing. Hold on. Let's see. Oh, hold on one second. Okay. Can you see my screen, Anna?
Yes, I
Okay.
can see
Does
yours.
it have the SOP for the cart shelter pet living areas set up?
Yes, it does.
Okay. This was the SOP that I mentioned earlier. There is an SOP to set up each individual space. So this one is obviously for the pet living areas, the dog room, the cat room, how to set it up, the spacing of the crates, the spacing of the rows, how you can, maneuver with the animals, all the signage, all the items that you would need to put inside the rooms. So we have this for each space in the cart shelter. And we also have another SOP that's for operations of the individual areas. So I just wanted to share that because I mentioned to you earlier. Okay, I will stop sharing my screen at the moment. That was record time. I talked really fast. I hope I did not skip anything, and I hope I didn't go so fast people were like, "What?"
Are those additional procedures on your website?
Not at this very moment, they're not.
Okay. Where would you get them?
When we give out the new manual this summer.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Wow, I'll take that as a good thing, I think.
Thank you, Christine.
Okay. All right. Well, if you guys have no questions, thank you for coming on. We just wanted to make sure nobody had questions and you were all good to go for the tabletops for the symposium. We'll get right to the scenario when we're there and test you on a disaster.
Thanks for coming, everybody.